You are standing over a body, not a modern one. This one is 9,000 years old, pulled from the banks of the Columbia River in Washington state, a man scientists would come to call Kennewick Man. He was in his 40s when he died. He had a healed spear point lodged in his pelvis, arthritis in his joints from decades of brutal physical work, evidence of injuries that should have killed him twice over. But here's the thing that doesn't make sense. His arteries were clean. His bones showed no signs of cancer, no metabolic disease, no diabetes. Nothing. He survived into middle age in one of the harshest environments on Earth, and his body didn't break down the way yours already might be starting to. So here's the question that cracks this whole thing open. If ancient humans lived brutal, short, violent lives, why did their bodies almost never develop the diseases that are now killing us? The answer isn't one thing. It's never just one thing. There's the agricultural betrayal, something we celebrate that quietly destroyed something ancient. There's the mismatch, your body running 300,000-year-old software, in a world it was never designed to navigate. There's the cancer signal, tumors, leave marks on bone, and the fossil record is almost completely silent. And there's the insulin paradox, a molecule that barely existed as a problem before 10,000 years ago. Each layer is more unsettling than the last. Let's go. Start with what people assume. We can't know what diseases ancient people had because soft tissue doesn't survive. That assumption is wrong. Cancer, atherosclerosis, and metabolic bone disease all leave measurable, identifiable marks on skeletal remains. And in 2010, Dr. Rosalie David at the University of Manchester and Michael Zimmerman at Villanova reviewed hundreds of ancient Egyptian mummies and thousands of fossil records spanning millions of years. They found 5 confirmed cases of cancer in the entire ancient world. 5. In a survey of over 200 mummies from Egypt and South America, malignant tumors appeared in fewer than 1% of individuals compared to today, where roughly 40% of Americans will receive a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. The Inuit of the pre-contact Arctic, documented by explorer Vilhjalmur Stephenson in the early 1900s, ate almost exclusively fat and protein for generations. No recorded diabetes, heart disease, or cancer until Western food arrived within a single generation and changed everything. The bones don't remember cancer because cancer didn't exist long enough to leave a memory. Now let's talk about the moment everything changed. Farming. People assume it saved humanity, stable food, end of starvation, foundation of civilization. But Dr. Clark Spencer Larson at Ohio State University spent decades analyzing skeletal collections from 12 geographic transition sites and found something different. The switch from foraging to farming between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago caused the single most dramatic deterioration in human health in the entire history of the species. Average height dropped 4 to 6 inches. Infant mortality spiked 300%. Dental cavities went from a 0.1% rate to 26% within 500 years in the same geographic populations. At Dixon Mounds in Illinois, bioarchaeologist Jane Buikstra documented the collapse in real time across multiple burial generations. Health fell apart the moment maize arrived. The Mycenaean Greeks, who still combined foraging with limited farming, averaged 5'10" for males. By the classical period, full grain dependence had dropped that average to 5'5", 5 inches, lost to wheat. We called it civilization. Our skeletons called it something else. Here's something else that almost never comes up. Diabetes. Most people assume it's a disease of old age and bad genetics. Dr. Gerald Reaven at Stanford proved otherwise in his landmark 1988 Banting lecture. He demonstrated that type 2 diabetes requires sustained hyperinsulinemia, chronically elevated insulin over years to develop. A high-carbohydrate diet raises fasting insulin by up to 50% within just 3 weeks. But the pre-agricultural humans' insulin was never chronically elevated. It spiked briefly, seasonally, around ripe fruit or wild honey, then returned to baseline. The Pima of Arizona and the Pima of Mexico are genetically identical populations. The Arizona Pima, eating a Western diet, have the highest rate of type 2 diabetes ever recorded in any population, over 50%. The Mexican Pima, eating a traditional diet, have rates under 7%. In 1952, anthropologists recorded 0 cases of diabetes on Nauru Island in the Pacific. By 1975, after westernized food arrived with phosphate mining wealth, 34% of adults were diabetic, one of the fastest epidemiological transitions ever recorded. Your pancreas is a hunter. You've turned it into a factory worker on a 24-hour shift. Ancient people weren't healthier because they were lucky. They were healthier because nothing in their environment had been invented. Yet, no flour mills, no sugar refineries, no chair. Every single disease in this video requires something that didn't exist 10,000 years ago to develop. Every single one. Now, let's tackle the biggest myth here, that saturated fat from animals caused the heart disease epidemic. In 2013, Dr. Randall Thompson and the Horus Study Group published CT scan results of 137 mummies across 4 ancient populations in The Lancet. Egyptian grain eaters showed arterial plaque in 38% of cases. The Unangan of the Aleutian Islands eating almost exclusively marine mammals and fish. Maximum saturated fat, 0 grains, showed plaque in under 10%. Utsi, the Iceman, who died in 3300 BC, had early-stage atherosclerosis. Isotopic analysis shows he ate a grain-heavy diet. The first documented heart disease patient had already switched to farming. The Maasai of Kenya, documented by Dr. George Mann at Vanderbilt in 1964, ate primarily milk, blood, and meat, and had cardiovascular disease rates near 0. Atherosclerosis is an inflammatory disease. Oxidized LDL, triggered by refined carbohydrates and seed oils, not dietary fat, initiates the arterial lesion. The arteries that clogged first weren't the ones eating meat. They were the ones eating bread. This is where it gets strange, because inside the gut, there's a second immune system, and it's been going quietly extinct. Dr. Justin Sonnenberg and Dr. Erika Sonnenberg at Stanford compared the microbiomes of the Hadza hunter-gatherers of Tanzania to Western populations and found the Hadza possessed over 1,400 microbial species. The average Western gut contains fewer than 800. Some Hadza-exclusive bacterial genera showed 0 presence in any Western sample studied, suggesting functional extinction within 2 to 3 generations of dietary shift. Dr. Carl Reinhard at the University of Nebraska analyzed fossilized feces from ancient Pueblo peoples from around AD 800 and found extraordinary microbial diversity and near total absence of the inflammatory bacterial markers that dominate modern samples. You cannot maintain 1,400 species on wheat, corn, soy, and sugar. We didn't just change what we eat. We made half our immune system go extinct. And then there's movement, which is one of the most underrated things in this entire story. Dr. Herman Ponzer at Duke University measured actual energy expenditure in Hadza hunter-gatherers using doubly labeled water and found something counterintuitive. Their total daily caloric burn was nearly identical to sedentary Westerners. But the pattern was completely different. The Hadza never sit for more than 30 to 40 minutes at a time. The average American sits for 9.5 hours per day. GLUT4 transporter activity, the mechanism that lets cells absorb blood sugar without requiring insulin drops, measurably after just 30 minutes of sitting. The Tsimane of Bolivia walk 17,000 steps per day and have the lowest rates of coronary atherosclerosis ever recorded in any population studied, published in The Lancet in 2017. They weren't athletes, they were just never still, and that stillness is what's killing us. Now here's the honest part. Ancient people did occasionally develop chronic disease, but only when they accidentally recreated modern conditions. Pharaoh Ramesses III and Amenhotep III both show CT-confirmed atherosclerosis. Their diets: refined grain, bread, beer, wine, honey cakes, the ancient world's version of processed food. At Cahokia in the Mississippi Valley, around AD 1100, intensive maize, monoculture, and sedentary urban life created a population of 20,000, and bioarchaeologist Dr. Kristen Hedman documented the first skeletal markers of metabolic dysfunction in the region's entire record. Both cases share identical variables: concentrated carbohydrate calories, sedentism, and year-round food surplus. Remove any one of those 3, and the disease vanishes from the record. The exceptions didn't break the rule. They confirmed the formula. There's one last thing I saved for the end. This video was never about diet. It was about mismatch, the scientific term for what happens when a species' biology and its environment diverge faster than evolution can track. The human body spent 300,000 years being shaped by intermittent food, constant movement, microbial diversity, no refined sugar, no industrial oils, no chairs. It became extraordinarily good at surviving those conditions. Then, in fewer than 300 generations, the blink of an evolutionary eye, we changed almost every one of those conditions simultaneously. Our genome is still 99.9% identical to a person who lived before the first farm was planted. The WHO estimates chronic metabolic diseases now account for 74% of all deaths globally and will cost the world economy over $47 trillion in lost productivity by 2030. We are spending civilization-scale resources fighting diseases that, according to the fossil record, essentially did not exist for 99% of human history. We are not sick because our bodies failed. We are sick because our bodies are succeeding running the exact ancient survival programs they were built to run in an environment those programs were never designed to meet. Go back to Kennewick Man, 40-something years old, spear point in his pelvis, body carved by decades of survival, his arteries clean, his cells intact, his metabolic system running exactly as designed. We live to 80 now, but our metabolic systems begin failing in our 30s. We have vaccines, we have surgery, we have antibiotics that would have saved his life a dozen times over. What we don't have is the world he lived in, the one that hadn't yet figured out how to make him sick. Ancient humans didn't have better medicine. They didn't have medicine at all. What they had was a world that hadn't learned how to make them sick yet, and somewhere along the way, we built exactly that world and called it progress.